emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 1315.PR2131, certificate number 17918. Tom Thumb. Is he a little guy? Is he a little guy who lives in the walls of your house?
No. He's not a little guy. In fact, I have done extensive testing, and there are no little guys living in the walls of my house.
Your house is borrower free? If you put a spool of thread down, no one takes it and makes a chair or a coffee table out of it?
No. My old house, what we called the farm, had lots of little guys living in the walls, and it was a source of constant stress for me.
Did you ever see them?
Yes, and I was fighting them all the time. I was yelling at them in the night.
Did they have long tails, or were they little leprechauns?
Some of them had long tails. Some of them had no tails. Some were leprechauns. Some were gnomes. Some were just things that go bump in the night.
How do you tell the difference between a leprechaun and a gnome?
Well, a leprechaun will admit to being a leprechaun, but a gnome will always deny it's a gnome.
Well, that's the same problem then.
We're not gnomes.
They'll both say they're leprechauns, right?
Oh, interesting.
So how do you know? You reach a door. It has two little imps in front of it. One always tells the truth. One always lies.
I feel like you have to, 50% of them have to be gnomes.
Probably.
And so
for the balance to be maintained.
So if everyone tells you they're a leprechaun, you know half of them are lying. So you have to,
in aggregate, that's very helpful. It doesn't help you with the individual leprechaun.
The thing is, if it sinks, it's a gnome. If it floats, it's a leprechaun.
It solves the problem either way.
We talk a lot about technology here, and a big premise of the show, of course, is that we're going through, even though it may not seem like it, we're going through a technological revolution. It does seem like it, I think, to people that are playing Angry Birds on their phones. Oh, wow, I was never able to do this. I talk a lot of smack about computers. My contention is that in almost every way, the computer revolution of the last 40 years has not materially improved anyone's life or even really improved business or correspondence. I mean, being able to email is nice, but is it better? In the sense that all of the constant back and forth communication you have, does it actually improve the experience of that communication?
I was thinking about how it could make everybody do a bunch more, everybody's work could look a bunch more polished, whether they were actually good in their field or not. But is that
an improvement?
Is that good?
That's not good. It's not actually good. None of it is actually good. We did fine before them, but more importantly, the fact that we have to struggle. I mean, there are plenty of people listening. They're like, what are you talking about? I never would have been able to fax my thing before.
Well, every single person listening probably has some kind of computerized device.
They're listening to it right now. And this gets used a lot. Podcasts.
Have they made your life better?
I mean, I think this podcast has inarguably made people's lives better.
Well, it paid for your house. I mean, it made your life better. But
on the whole, have they made our lives better commensurate with the amount of money we spend on them, the amount of time we spend on them, I don't think there's any way you could argue yes.
Even if you jump to all the processing power needed to, say, map the human genome.
Right, which is interesting and cool.
Well, it might also
eventually make our lives
cure
better.
a bunch of diseases.
I'm not saying computers won't eventually make our lives better.
But you have to, I'm just saying you have to offset that with whatever computers actually, did with drones accidentally 6 hours ago in Yemen,
Exactly. Or just the energies that they're sucking in order to accomplish these things, but also just the amount of time that you and I spend just sitting aimlessly moving stuff around on a page.
I would say on the whole, computers were good when they were on tables in a weird part of your house.
Okay.
But then when you could always be in the computer, that's when your frontal lobe started glowing.
This is the argument that computers were good when they helped you balance your household books.
Well, when you had to go to them, when you had to visit them, like a lot of things. Let's say you had to visit, somebody invents the spinning jenny. You go to a spinning jenny, you spin something. Some kind of, maybe not, I don't know what I'm talking about. A mechanical loom.
Yeah, spinning jenny.
But let's say there was just a mechanical loom in your pocket that made you always have to be looming things. I mean,
we would all be dressed in such luxuriant fabrics. No, but that's the problem. We'd be wearing crappy fabrics because they were made on pocket looms.
Basically, all the bad things of the Industrial Revolution would have happened, but also none of the good things would have happened.
None of the nice wool.
Because we would have we had to be on our looms 24/7.
But one of the, and this, we haven't even gotten into social media, and let's not, but one of the premises of Omnibus is that in the future, looking back, there will be this very strange moment where it seems like time began, because prior to this moment, there will only be records in the form of moldy books, maybe oil paintings of a very few people.
VHS tapes where the tracking doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, a few, like, somebody used a sticker maker to put some labels on a filing cabinet. And then really
minute by minute coverage of everything after 2002.
Over a period of just a year or two, we suddenly, the world comes into focus, and then everybody has every minute of their lives documented from then on. Presumably, unless there's A, an apocalypse, or B, people come to their senses.
It does mean that when people, I mean, it's the same as now. When people imagine the Civil War, right now they're imagining Civil War movies. It'll be just the same as then. People trying to think, what would the 70s have been like? They're just going to look at YouTube era recreations of it.
Yeah, which will always be wrong. And I mean, that's the problem. I mean, my great-grandparents, my great-grandparents lived long and full lives, and the only documentation is a few letters written in cursive hand that are in a folder in my mom's house that I will keep because I'm a pack rat, but my daughter won't.
Yep.
And that's the end. They are then is a notation on family search.
Coming from a few government documents.
Whereas I will have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of recordings unless
your daughter throws them away.
No, but we're encoding them on platinum discs.
We're going to put them in a titanium vault in the desert somewhere.
But can you think?
Some days I think I can, but then sometimes I think it's just an epiphenomenon of consciousness.
Yeah. I wonder that myself. But, human beings, this is a Jeopardy question for you. And I don't remember how to phrase them. Do you phrase them as a question? No, you phrase the answer as a question.
He's going to get there, folks.
What is, how long have modern humans lived on the earth?
That is, you phrased it wrong.
How?
No, that's a question.
Modern humans have lived on the earth for this many millennia.
There you go. Modern humans, like evolved, like ones that look like us?
Yes, that it can think like us and
think like us.
Yeah, think like us.
It's 2 digits. 40.
40,000 years.
Yes. Is it less?
I think it's more.
Okay, how much more?
I think it's 100,000 years.
Okay.
But let's settle on 60 just in case there are some
What's halfway between
anthropologists
40 and 100? 70.
70,000 years.
The answer I made up and the answer you looked up, we'll take the average.
I'm not even sure I looked it up. I think I might just have it on the top. I might have that as one of those thumbnails.
Well, it's a little blurry because we didn't evolve overnight. It's not like a monolith appeared and we touched it and then we started whacking each other with bones.
Exactly. But I mean, I don't know how old are the oldest cave? Oh no, wait. The oldest cave paintings are how old?
Nope. The oldest cave paintings
cave paintings are
this old. It's easy.
Yeah.
The internet tells me 64,000 years.
So there you go.
But it's a Neanderthal. So like, what is it? What does a thinking person count as? That's somebody of a different species doing cave painting.
Wait a minute. You're insulting me now because I have a measurable amount of Neanderthal.
Is that what 23andMe says about you?
That's what a computer that sequenced our genomes concluded.
See, didn't that make your life better knowing that you were 3% Neanderthal?
No. I mean, all it did was introduce me to the concept of Neanderthal pride, and now I'm on some websites I don't want to be on. But if you think about tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of years, I mean, I didn't even get close to saying that 6 times.
No.
Let alone 10 times.
You lost interest very quickly.
People could not travel faster than a horse. There was no method other than falling off a cliff by which they could travel faster than a galloping horse. Is that right? Can you think of an instance? Wait a minute. A person could travel faster than a horse by doing... No.
Not what?
By...
Just say this. Just say
by
this. By doing this.
By doing this. A person can travel faster than a horse by doing this.
Do you think there were human cannonballs in 19th century circuses?
Oh boy, could you have
survived
put into
firing
a cannon? No, I don't think so.
Not even with some kind of mechanism whereby you're shielded from the explosion, but it forces some kind of piston-like thing to push you forward.
I think most cannonball things at the circus are actually like steam powered. There's no actual gunpowder in there.
No, you're right. It's just it's a. I think they're spring loaded.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure.
And then there's a boom,
and it's just a platform pushing the guy up.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, we would have been aware of species that could move faster than a horse.
That's right.
But you can't really ride a cheetah.
I think that there are and have been for a while human beings that could sprint faster than a horse over a short distance because it takes the horse a little bit to get going. But I don't think... Oh, and there have been endurance races.
Right. Over a sufficiently long distance, humans are better than almost any other animal.
Right. Because we just keep going, whereas a horse needs to stop and eat hay.
Eat some oats and hang out with Mickey Rooney in a barn.
Yeah, that's right. So... But I think in terms of like top speed, once a horse gets going, it can outpace a human being. So you'd still be going faster on a horse. Now, you might think that a sailboat could go faster than a horse.
Can the fastest clipper ship go faster than a horse?
No. The USS Constitution...
Well, the horse will sink.
The horse will sink. That's right. And we're talking about overland, but just to feel the wind in your hair... the USS Constitution topped out at 13 knots, which is, 15 miles an hour.
That's not so great.
And let's see. A horse can, like the fastest horse, can go 55 miles an hour.
I mean, we're all moving through space at a million miles an hour, right?
Go ahead, sing the song.
It's an 8 billion way tie between all of us. But we weren't aware of it because we didn't have computers to tell us.
We were not aware of it until computers. That's right.
And I guess there's the distance, there's the speed of the Earth around the motion of the Earth around the sun, the expansion of the universe. I can't think of any way to get faster than a horse, unless you're on a horse, but also you're poking it with a pin and it's going, woo!
Wow.
And then it speeds up past 55. Is that why 55 miles per hour was the EPA, the 70s era speed limit? Because it was like, we're just going back to horse times.
That's right.
Jimmy
And
Carter's like, the speed of a horse is the fastest that God intended us to go.
And Sammy Hagar was like, no, computers.
Once again, Carter versus Hagar, the eternal struggle.
Well, it was an eternal quest, obviously, to go faster than a horse, just as it always, as Farside taught us, man's desire to fly higher than a bird is what caused us to invent the bow and arrow, because if we couldn't fly, then we wanted to murder birds.
We were mad at them.
Yeah, so bird murder.
Well, the arrow could go higher than many birds. So there's that. You could vicariously soar through your arrow.
Wait a minute. What bird can't go higher than an arrow besides an ostrich?
I'm just saying at any given time, a bird
chicken.
could be lower than an arrow you would shoot.
That's right.
By the time you shot it, the bird would have a hard time outpacing your arrow getting higher.
Right. If it was a low flying bird and you shot an arrow, but the bird, if it saw the arrow, could presumably take evasive action.
It won't. It won't. It won't have time.
And so, jumping ahead, should I reveal this? Yes.
What does your sense of narrative tell you? John, your sense of narrative reveals to you this.
My sense of narrative, I'm not going to jump ahead, Ken. I'm going to stay I'm going to do this show in a linear fashion. You know, often your shows tend to progress through time. I often jump around. Oh, this happened in 2015. This happened in 1904. And I think it just makes it harder for people to understand.
You're a fourth dimensional being.
Yeah, that's right.
You're like Billy Pilgrim. You can look down on all of time as a single hypercube.
Bleep, bloop, bleep, because I'm telling a story and it doesn't matter. You know, the things happen in time, but that's only part of the story.
I like how you think the definition of telling a story is, and it can't be in order. That one thing we know about stories, that they do not have chronology.
Don't put them in order. Now, the steam engine, let's get to the steam engine. I'm going to jump to the steam engine.
I mean, I assumed when you said for centuries, I always assume that ends with until the Industrial Revolution.
It all ends in the Industrial Revolution, and then there's a brief period where we're all breathing coal smoke, and then the internet happens, and then there was a pandemic, and we stayed home from then on.
Let me guess. All the coal smoke made the horses slower, and so we were finally able to beat them because they were just hacking up a lung.
That was the point of steam engines, was to pollute the environment so that horses were no longer faster than humans. Just like the bow and arrow was invented to kill the birds.
The eternal struggle. Horses are my Sammy Hagar. I'm so tired of seeing them outpace me.
But, you know, steam engines, of course, it's a concept like everything long ago. I mean, the Greeks had a concept, not of a like a reciprocating steam engine, but, you know, the idea of steam power.
They knew they could make a thing spin.
Yeah.
It just hadn't occurred to them to do anything good
to have
with
a piston or have it move a rod.
Right.
And it really wasn't until the 18th century that we started to get the idea of steam power being used in machines. James Watt, not the Secretary of the Interior, but...
not the Beach Boys hating Secretary of the Interior.
The earlier one, made a lot of improvements to the steam engine such that it, arguably sparked the Industrial Revolution. And this is all happening in one of our favorite countries, England, not like Canada,
which was England,
which was at the time.
Well, it wasn't England, but it was
England.
There was a part of land there that was forever. Why do you always say England? Are you ever going to explain?
It's such a long story. I don't even know why. I don't even know why I bother.
You're really committing to the bit, though.
Well, I've just been saying it like every mispronunciation, you say it enough and then there's no other way to say it. Your mind, you dig a trough. You dig a mind trough. Well, you're busy clicking away over there. What are you looking up? Are you just answering emails?
I am not. I am writing down which things, if you care to know.
Yes.
I am writing down which mail I opened on the last episode.
Oh, I see.
So I know which mail to do in this episode.
Yes. Good. It
has little to do with the steam engine. I'll admit.
Every podcast host that I co-host with is at some point or another answering their email while I talk. But I understand.
I'm not. This is show related.
Okay. All right. Good.
Think of me as some kind of producer figure who I'm going to be like, that story's great, John. Now let's do it one more time. Does that help?
Yeah. And then I'm like, That was it, man. That was the take. That was the final take. Come on. God, I'm an artist. So the steam engine offers us all these new opportunities. Initially we developed it to cut and paste, to
loom things,
to cut fabric and move spindles and clomp, clomp, clomp. But it was very soon after that the idea that it could present locomotion.
What if this loom was whizzing across the Surrey countryside, people said.
Yeah, how would I get this loom to scurry? A scurrying loom is what I want. The steamboat was an exciting invention where
not to me,
the steam engine,
I was like,
moved a boat, put, 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 put. But of course, a steamboat is limited by a lot of the factors that limit sailing boats, and steam engine powered
friction,
steamships.
Right? I mean, just you can turn that wheel as fast, that paddle wheel as fast as you can. But I was thinking about this on the ferry yesterday. Like, you're still rubbing against all this water.
Yeah,
it's just going to slow you down.
It's why all these new fast boats are up on those foils, right? Hydrofoils. You get most of the mass out of the water. We've talked about naval architecture before a couple of times, and there are ways to make ships go faster by making them longer and narrower, which has something to do with Bernoulli's principle, which, God, we talk about every episode.
I'll take your word for it. This Italian physicist's namesake principle
is how the drinking straw works. Ooh, ding, 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 ding. Is that the sound it makes? Boop.
It does not go ding, 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 ding. It's a light. There's no sound at all.
When you hit the buzzer?
Yes.
But it's called a buzzer.
That's a signaling. That's why we say a signaling device. Buzzer is a...
it doesn't go bong?
Buzzer's a euphemism, I guess.
What are the other shows where buzzers go bong? It's a Family Feud.
Family Feud definitely has that. The Bernoulli's principle, I think, is also what makes your shower curtain suck inward when the...
it's how a drinking straw works, but it's also how so many things work. God, Bernoulli's principle is all over the place. We could just talk about it endlessly.
But let's not. I have to get back to my email.
Oh, right. Sorry. I'll try and whip through this.
All right, that was good, love. Can you just tell the story quickly about Tom Thumb, and we'll all have a drink. We'll have tea break.
Now, we like to think, I think, that the railroad was an invention that was waiting for the steam engine to happen. But in fact, the railroad started to be developed before the steam engine came on the scene.
The idea is you would have a fixed rail delimited path that would be propelled by horses?
Yes.
How is that an advantage? The horse can't run off into the woods?
Well, you can pull a lot more carts. Apparently, a horse can pull more than a single cart, or a team of horses can.
On iron rails.
But on rails. Now,
less friction.
The first railroads were actually made of wood.
Well, that can't be good.
And it was always the early railroads were all to do with mining, because you've got all this ore and you need to move it to the boats or move it to the furnaces. You
could dig a tunnel to the smelter, but it takes a long time. We recently learned.
And you never get the ore to the smelter. It turns into its own thing. So they, the idea of like, what if we put these carts on rails so that we didn't have to steer them, we could hook up a bunch of horses and pull it along rails. But
is the idea you don't need a human then?
No, but you only need one human, or you just need one buddy.
And I bet there's less friction, right? If you do it right, it's essentially it's like a ball bearing like thing if you've got metal wheels on metal rails.
Yeah. Otherwise, your wheels are going in the mud, or you've got a macadam down, and of course that's its own pain in the neck. Wood rails, unfortunately, if you put a bunch of weight into carts, the wood doesn't hold up.
Right.
And so then the idea of iron rails was introduced, pulled by horses, but the technology of the time was cast iron. And cast iron, you could only cast a rail in a pretty short length, and cast iron's pretty brittle.
Why could you only? It's because you're not.
Because you're casting it.
What does that mean? It's the size of the mold.
Yeah, you pour it into a mold.
Could you just make a longer mold?
Well, how long a mold do you want? How
That's a fair point.
well, like how
The smelter might be very far away.
yeah, it's like you're going to make a mold of a rail. You're probably going to try and do it as long as you can, but what is that? It's not that long. You're not going to be able to cast iron long enough to make rails big enough to be useful long term.
What is the new technology that makes rails longer?
Well, it is wrought iron is the innovation.
We weren't working iron.
That's right. We weren't rotting it enough. And then ultimately...
Rot is past tense of work.
Yeah, right. And then, yeah, right. We didn't...
For a second, I was going to say ring, but that's not right. It's work.
We didn't work. But then rolled steel came out, and you could make these, these rails that were pretty long, because it was continuous, right? I mean, you couldn't make a rail that was back then. I mean, now they roll out steel rail that is as long as a train. They just put the rail from one car to the next, and the cars are articulated, but the rail goes all the way through, and they can take it out. It's pretty cool when you see them.
I think I need to watch a Mr. Rogers picture style video of steel being rolled out. And
one of the early inventions with rail was that the rail had the flange on it. Now you think it's the rolling stock, the actual bogie, the wheel that has the flange that keeps the train on the track. But early, one of the first inventions was the rail had the flange.
I guess it makes more sense because all you've seen is wheels, and you're like, okay, I need to make some little runner, some little track that the wheel will stay in. Now that technology is only used on 1980s closet doors.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
Yeah, those are good.
I still have those. But eventually, the steam engine had arrived, and this is all, again, in the United Kingdom. The steam engine had arrived at a point where it started to seem like, wow, what if we tried to put this onto this technology, which is already has become part of the industrial revolution in England, the horse-drawn train. And several attempts were made, but the problem was that the steam engine did not appear to have enough power to go up inclines. The early steam motors were, low horsepower.
So you could do it if you live someplace flat.
So what they did was they built railroads with rack and pinion, where there was a cog.
Like those cog railways on mountains.
Yeah, exactly. And this was the kind of, the way it would propel itself up a mountain. Well, it can't go very fast in that. But rail development was happening in the UK, and they had a contest where they had a section of rail, and a bunch of different locomotive ideas came, and they all raced.
It's just like those robot races, right? It's the 19th century version of like, how far can you get your robot across the Mojave Desert?
Yeah, right.
'Cause it's brand new tech, and nobody's ever seen. Like, I don't know what the desert crossing robot of the future looks like. These guys didn't know what the trains and the railways were going to look like.
Yeah, what about this? What about that?
It could be any shape. It could be any tech.
The pistons are going this way, and the thing about a steam boiler is, there are a lot of ways for it to not work. You're trying to condense, a lot of the early versions of it, the heating and cooling of the boiler was actually happening on the piston, which is really bad. That's a bad machine. And having a condensing chamber where the heating and cooling was happening separate from the engine was an innovation. On and on and on. I'm no expert on steam engines, so don't let me start speculating on how they work.
If you had told me today, it's actually better to have the heating and cooling happening on the piston. You don't want a condensing chamber. I would just nod and be like, well, of course.
Sure.
Good thing
absolutely.
Good thing they figured that out.
Now, during this same period, and we've discussed this before on the Omnibus, although not extensively, this was the era of the canal. The canal seemed to be the industrial solution to moving ore and big transportation issues long distances. If we just dig a canal from here to there, then the work is done, and boats, and a lot of those boats were pulled by horses. So again, not moving very fast, but relative to transporting all that ore in carts or on the backs of hardworking Birminghamers.
I was going to say donkeys.
Or
but
donkeys also.
But yeah.
So canals were all the rage. And
hold on. I forgot to hold up my not compatible with Marxism
not
sign.
compatible with Marxism.
When you brought up putting the ore on the backs of the poor.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Not compatible with Marxism. But how do you feel about canals?
Canals are compatible with Marxism.
Yes.
I have ruled.
Yes. So canals are getting built all over England and Europe, and in the United States, the Erie Canal, famous canal, built to get up to...
We know every inch of the way from Albany to Buffalo. Isn't that what the song says? From Albany to Buffalo.
So the Erie Canal's taken us all the way up to Buffalo. And, of course, the
Erie Canal ended at this city. John.
Buffalo. Beep. Oh, no, there's no buzzer.
You need to phrase it in the form of a question.
Wait a minute. What is Buffalo?
There you go.
Where is Buffalo?
Buffalo?
Would you give somebody a thumbs down if they said, what is Buffalo instead of where is Buffalo?
Well, no. I mean, for one thing, it makes more sense in that. If somebody said, where is Buffalo? You wouldn't say, the Erie Canal ended at this city. I mean, what is Buffalo?
Oh, I see.
Is an equally implausible question that would lead to that answer. So basically, no matter what the question is, it's right. There was a guy who was just saying, what's Reagan? What's gravity?
Oh,
what's
instead of
New Zealand? Yeah.
Oh, I want that person to be censured.
No, it's a tactic. So you don't have to think about your phrasing.
But it seems like a James Holzhauer tactic. Save half a split second.
Harsh words.
If you are on Jeopardy and you hit the buzzer and actually make a buzzer sound with your mouth,
yeah.
Would you tell them to stop doing that? Or would that be one of those quirky things that Jeopardy contestants do that make them beloved?
I would probably ask them to stop doing that. It seems like it would annoy the other players. It seems like to level the playing field, we need to maintain a certain amount of decorum.
Would you ask them on air, or would that be a thing that you'd do off air during a commercial break? Would you stop doing that? Hey, would you knock that off? Or would you say like,
hey, buddy,
can you stop doing that?
All right, but I need to remind you, stop doing that thing.
So the thing about the Erie Canal that's interesting is, and we don't talk about this enough when we talk about the Erie Canal, the War of 1812 was only resolved not that long before the Erie Canal began construction.
Okay.
The Erie Canal was only authorized in 1817. So that's not that long after the War of 1812.
I'm not a mathematician, but it might be around 5 years
That's
after.
That's right. And so the St. Lawrence Seaway, which effectively duplicates the Erie Canal, but naturally through the ocean. Let's call the St. Lawrence Seaway
it's now part of the ocean. It's the natural childbirth of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal is the epidural.
Yeah, up to a certain point, it's the ocean, and then it stops being the ocean at a point.
When the salt stops?
Yeah, the salinity
the problem.
will change just enough.
Salinity changes gradually.
Yeah.
Does that mean it's mostly the ocean at a certain point, and then it's somewhat the ocean, and then it's slightly the ocean?
It's like everything that's ambiguous. You just determine it. You say like this much salinity, and it's no longer the ocean.
There's a bright line.
Yeah, and you just say here it is, and you draw you put a rope across the St. Lawrence Seaway, and you say welcome to not the ocean.
Does the government pick a number?
Yeah, I think it's the government.
I'm holding up compatible with Marxism.
There you go, compatible with Marxism.
The government picks an arbitrary number.
Of the two of us, I am so glad that you are the one adjudicating what is compatible with Marxism.
Well, that's mostly because you're supposed to be teaching us about the Tom Thumb.
Oh, yeah.
I just have a lot more spare time over on this side of the table. I have no idea what the Tom Thumb is.
Anyway,
I thought it was a guy in your wall.
So the Erie Canal was partly to get around the fact that Canada controlled the St. Lawrence Seaway because they were still enemies of the United States. But there's another thing that the Erie Canal was enemy of, which was other port cities on the American seaboard.
Oh, sure. They're going to take a hit.
That's right.
If nothing's going to go through them anymore.
Because it used to be that cities down the coast were responsible for moving goods and services, although less services than goods.
Right. You can't move services to horseback in most cases.
In most cases.
Sex work, for example, very difficult.
You can transport sex workers via horseback,
Right.
but at that point, are they goods?
But the actual service?
No.
Tricky.
And so that brings us to the great city of Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore
Hates the Erie Canal to this day.
They really do. They were so against the Erie Canal, and there's a reason. That is that Baltimore was, through the Cumberland Gap, a very quick route to get stuff to the Ohio River. And you could...
So it employs a ton of people to get the stuff off the ships and onto the carriages.
That's right. Onto the carriages and over the river and through the woods.
Through the gap.
And then down to the Ohio. And once it was on the Ohio, then goods could move west. And Baltimore had built a great sort of trunk road over this distance. But they saw that the canal was going to be able to move a lot more stuff, a lot more efficiently.
These guys are cheating. They're like making the Ohio River go like all the way to Albany.
That's right.
We can't have that. That's not where God would have put the Ohio River in Albany if he'd wanted it there.
And basically, yeah, you get to the Ohio River through the Great Lakes rather than
right.
And just
They're
like
cheating,
just like it's cheaper to saw down trees in the Northwest, ship them to Asia, have them milled into things, and then shipped back. It was cheaper to send things up to Buffalo and down than it was to take it over the road. And so the city of Baltimore said, this will not stand. And they started to, they recognized that rail travel had this much greater efficiency. And so the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad,
hence the name.
the B&O Railroad, which made famous by the Monopoly game,
right,
was incorporated in order to build a rail route to the Ohio from Baltimore.
To protect those port jobs.
Right. And the initial rail idea was that the rail cars would be pulled by horses. At this point in England,
For a second, I thought you wouldn't do it.
England.
And then you did.
They were already mating steam engines with trains in a sort of hot
David Cronenberg kind of a way.
Sort of 60s, 70s cyborgian.
Heavy Metal Magazine.
Proto-cyborgian. But in the United States, we were a little bit behind. A lot of that equipment we were still importing from England.
Got to keep the brand.
And the B&O Railroad had not yet constructed its rail all the way to the Ohio when they said, look, we need to get in on this steam engine game. And so they put out a call for someone to design a steam engine that could potentially power one of these carts, what would be a big draft horse pulled cart. And they were contacted by an engineer by the name of Peter Cooper, who said, you know what? I think I can build a motor that will drive this machine. I've seen a rig that could haul that tanker. And so he took a boiler that was basically like the size of a kitchen boiler, a pretty small little house boiler, and he built it into a steam engine. At one point, he didn't have enough piping, and so he dismantled a couple of old muskets and used the musket barrels, bent them.
We're thinking this guy can beat the Erie Canal? Come on.
Bent them into a little, a boiler, a little machine. And the B&O had, at this point, constructed 13 miles of their track, which
they already had track before they had the tech to ride on it.
Well, because they were using horses to pull the...
Right.
They had planned 380 miles of track all the way up and over and down to the Ohio. But this was a sort of proof of concept. So at the end of August in 1830, now wait a minute, it's the beginning of August now when we're recording this show.
It's early September by the time the first people could possibly hear this.
Oh, so
it would be the what anniversary? 1830? So it'd be the 192nd anniversary.
The 192nd anniversary of this event
This fateful day.
has just happened to you, futurelings who are listening to this show in the future.
Not very far in the future.
On the 28th of August, the B&O challenged Peter Cooper to transit this 13-mile section of track from Baltimore to what was called Relay House.
Which is just wherever the track ended at this
Which
point?
is where the track ended, yeah. And so they loaded up a car. They put 40 dignitaries and top-hatted gentlemen
in the car?
In the cart with them, yeah.
This is experimental tech, and they're putting the judges in the machine?
In fact, a lot of them crowded up on the locomotive, and then the rest were back in the car. And these are just horse carts. You know, they are indistinguishable from horse carts, but on a track. And off they went. And choo-choo, Chattanooga, there they are. They make it to Ellicott Mills, which is there at the relay house. And at one point on the trip, the locomotive got up to 18 miles an hour.
What's being tested here? Are they timing how long it takes to get there?
They're timing how long it takes to get there, and so this route is very steep, and it's also, there are a lot of tight corners. And so some of the challenge, a big part of the challenge, and a lot of the conviction that rail would never be able to actually make this route is it possible for this machine to go up this steep incline and also go around these tight corners? And
let's try it with a bunch of guys in top hats.
That's right.
See if they can go around the corner. How many guys in top hats do you think they lost at every S curve?
It was back at a time when you couldn't keep guys in top hats off of your machines. So at the point at which they got up to 18 miles an hour, there were actually several of these guys in top hats that took out their pens and jotted down notes to prove that it was possible to write at that speed.
At the speed of 18 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because that was the point at which they had passed horse speed.
So horses could technically go faster than that, but
you couldn't ride.
You couldn't ride and write. You couldn't ride in a horse-drawn cart and go much faster.
They're conveying something about the smoothness. I'm going at horsey speed, but I'm not ba-da-ba-dum-ba-dum.
And look at me. Like, it's, you can write and you're not, it's like passing the sound barrier.
That's what I was going to say.
Is it going to explode our face?
Think about these guys feeling like Chuck Yeager at 18 miles an hour.
So as they're like huckle-de-bucking along on the train, they pass the stagecoach operation, the haulage company, the teamsters of the famous company Stockton and Stokes. And Stockton and Stokes sees this train go by with all these top hats whooping and hollering. And they say,
Look at these yo-yos.
I don't like this very much at all.
They say not compatible with Marxism.
Not compatible with the Teamsters Union, which is compatible with Marxism. And Cooper had actually already had this problem because Cooper was a tinkerer and an inventor, and he had earlier invented a steam-powered chain system that would pull boats along the Erie Canal.
And that had pissed off some stevedores or burro drivers or something?
It had infuriated the Teamsters, who said, this is going to take away good jobs from God-fearing horse drivers.
And horses.
And so his steam chain system was rejected, and horses retained this role on the Erie Canal. Peter Cooper also invented...
Was that why it was rejected, by the way? As a jobs program?
Yeah,
basically?
Yeah, because of the horses. Huh. Peter Cooper also invented a self-rocking baby cradle that had a fan-powered fly shoer
And the Teamsters hated that because they used to go over to young mothers' houses and rock their babies.
Well, and they would shoo the flies with the horsetail. But Peter Cooper had another investment in making this whole thing work, which was that he had already bought 3,000 acres of land outside Baltimore on the train line.
Oh, no. That's confidence, I guess, in your invention.
That's right. Peter Cooper was...
He's betting on Peter Cooper.
He was kicking out the jams. Anyway, when they turned the train around, and what's great is that the Baltimore and Ohio had already built 2 sets of tracks there and back. They saw into the future enough to know that that one track wasn't going to be sufficient. They needed parallel tracks,
or else you can't run 2 directions at once.
And so they got to the end. They switched the train around, got it ready to make the return trip, and the smirking staff of Stockton and Stokes rode up with a cart drawn by an enormous and beautiful gray draft horse, and they said, "We'll race you."
Oh, it wasn't supposed to be a race.
No, this was, we really loved watching you guys go by hooping and hollering at 18 miles an hour, but we bet we can beat you back to Baltimore.
So this is a Chuck Yeager situation where like some guy just watching in the desert is like, I bet I can fly faster than that.
That's right.
They thought they were just doing a test flight, and then it turned into a race.
And of course, you see the steam engine go by and you're like, uh-oh, there goes all of our traffic to the Ohio River. And so you got to prove that the top hats and Peter Cooper are wrong. So the Peter Cooper and the railroad guys accept the challenge, and off they go. And unlike a foot race, the horses jump ahead. And they loaded the horse cart up with as much, and I'm not sure as many people.
Yeah, did they find
but
industrialists of the same weight?
Yeah, they loaded it up so that it had an equivalent. It was pulling an equivalent amount of weight.
One on each track, parallel.
And they head out. Well, the horses get going a lot faster because the steam engine is doing its like huff and puff, trying to get up the slope. And it takes a while, and the horses are way out in front, like a half mile ahead before the train starts to get up speed. And eventually the locomotive starts to catch up to the horses, and it gets now neck and neck, and the horses are really going.
You're literally seeing the 19th century happen here.
And this is it, right? Like 1830, end of August. This is the first time that a train has really...
This is like the one moment when the ocean turns salty. It was a gradual process, but like you can actually see it happening in one place.
And the locomotive passes the horses. And immediately a leather belt that is used between the compressor and the flywheel slips off.
Oh no.
And the train goes and they,
flop,
they all of a sudden lose all their power. The horses go storming by. Peter Cooper, frantically trying to reattach this leather belt, burns both of his hands. Thrashes himself, finally gets it all together, but the horses end up winning the race.
But it seems like, because of a mishap, if you run that back 10 times,
yeah, but
maybe the horses have no chance.
This is it. This is the race.
That's not how history works.
That's right. It's not like if Chuck Yeager blew up his jet and crashed in the desert, he doesn't get the record. Now, we know this story because of a lecture not given in 1830, but in 1868 by a man named John H.B. Latrobe, who was an investor in the B&O Railroad and who was on the train at the time. And John Latrobe sets up the whole story and is telling this story as a kind of, here's an example of, American ingenuity, and this was the moment, the last moment where the horse could compete with industrialization. And from that 1868 lecture, the event was immortalized in oil paintings and became,
really? So nobody thought about it for 40 years, and then suddenly it became iconic.
Became this iconic sort of like, oh, that was the moment. Now we're all traveling all around on trains.
Those were the days.
And none of us really thought to commemorate it at the time because they dismantled Tom Thumb as soon as this was over.
Tom Thumb was never a production model, right?
Right. But they, in this flurry of excitement, they rebuilt Tom Thumb. They made a replica of Tom Thumb that even today sits in the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore. But here's the problem. Subsequent researchers, 20th century researchers, including the B&O Museum itself, can find no contemporary account of the race. Including in any of the diaries of any of the many notable dignitaries who were on the trains, or on the train.
In Latrobe's account.
Including Latrobe. Now, Peter Cooper did make reference to it at some point in the in 1860. He, in the course of an interview, said, yeah, I raced a train against a horse one time and the train motor broke and the horse won. And we didn't publicize it because it was embarrassing.
So it did happen. Latrobe wasn't just myth-making?
No one knows. Currently, the B&O Museum has, there's a big asterisk next to this because, like everything in the 19th century, it became this hagiography, this this is how the Industrial Revolution, this was the moment that it crossed the Rubicon. But you would think, given the number of those people that were keeping daily diaries, that one of them might have said, was in an interesting race today.
Like, can you imagine just getting pulled along at 18 miles at unparalleled speeds by a brand new invention and then not telling anyone? No newspaper covers it? No
you
diary?
Were embarrassed about the horses winning? It's possible that the owners of the B&O would have then said, all right, let's everybody just keep this under wraps.
I guess.
But that does make the thing a curious thing. Now, the first locomotive to go faster than 55 miles an hour, breaking President Carter's heart,
and warming the cockles of Sammy Hagar,
and validating Sammy Hagar in all of his scofflaudom, happened not very long after. At that point, the steam engine was in full flight, and you couldn't keep a good train down.
So just a few years later, suddenly it went from 18 to 55?
Yeah, we're talking about, this is in 1830. By 1850, trains were hauling butt all over. And if you think about, it wasn't that much longer before the Civil War. And, when was the Transcontinental Railroad? So, the Transcontinental Railroad was suggested to Congress in 1845. So just 15 years later. And they started work on it. It took them a while. And we've talked about this on the Omnibus. But because the construction of it was a big scam. But Peter Cooper never built another locomotive. Did not go on to...
He didn't think this is the future?
He did not say... I mean, his 3,000 acres outside of Baltimore ended up being worth a lot of money.
Right.
But he did not see himself as having built the first American locomotive and built the first, being a part of that first American railroad. He did continue to be an inventor, and in fact had a steel mill where he produced the first steel I-beams, which, of course, then go on to being a...
Without that, you don't get skyscrapers.
Yeah. He didn't invent, but he manufactured torpedoes and he patented powdered gelatin.
My man could have invented trains, but instead he's like, no, I think what America really needs is delicious gelatin desserts.
But then, at the age of 85, he ran for president of the United States out of the nominee of the Greenback Party. He is still to this day the oldest person to run for president.
Until 2024. What election was this?
It was, he ran against Rutherford B. Hayes. So it was 1876, which was after the 1868 lecture by John Latrobe. So he was a famous American at this point, having been lionized as the inventor of the locomotive.
On the strength of the Tom Thumb, even though...
Well, but he was also a very wealthy man and a notable inventor and industrialist, American
sure.
industrialist.
But the railroad's such a big part of the American myth. You have to imagine that's a big part of his campaign if he runs on that.
Right. But he lost. But when
did Hayes, actually. Tilden should have won, but I'm still mad.
You're mad about how Rutherford B. Hayes stole the election? Are you a truther?
I'm a Samuel Tilden truther.
A Tilden truther. How do you think America would be different if Tilden had won?
Oh, yeah. This is going to be my Apple TV Plus
For all mankind.
Series. There's pictures of Samuel Tilden on every street corner now.
All the freed slaves got 40 acres and a mule, and America had...
Yeah, maybe it's a utopia.
Yeah, I wish.
In this Tilden world.
There is one utopian aspect to this, which is that when Peter Cooper died, his enormous estate went to fund Cooper Union College.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, he's the Cooper of Cooper Union?
He is the Cooper of Cooper Union.
So if you've been to the New York Design Museum or whatever it's called, that's all coming from his B&O money.
That's right.
Huh. But you really should have stuck with it.
Yeah, right.
Here's my Tiger Mom take on this story. He should have kept making locomotives. You need to work hard like Peter Cooper and not give up like Peter Cooper did later.
We would call them Coopers now.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. I'm riding the Cooper down to Portsmouth.
I don't think that's true, since we don't call them by the name of whoever did invent a perfected one.
That's the thing. You don't even know who it was, right? But if it was
a big name like Rich Peter Cooper.
Yeah, you'd call them Peter Coopers. Hey, are you taking the Peter Cooper over to Chicago?
Just taking the Cooper to Cooperstown,
Coop.
Super Cooper. That's what they would call bullet trains.
Super Cooper.
Yeah, Super Cooper.
Yeah.
And that concludes Tom Thumb, entry 1315.PR2131, certificate number 17918 in the omnibus. Now, as products of our broken time in the second industrial revolution here, we were on social media, really 24/7, at Omnibus Project, at Ken Jennings, at John Roderick, when he falls off the wagon. You could receive email. We could receive email at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. Physical mail could be sent to us at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. I didn't think I was going to get through all the mail today, and we've almost done it.
Yeah, but there's 2 big boxes there. What are you talking about?
One of those boxes, somebody paid $23 to send us something, and I almost feel bad. Like, what could we ever do that would be worth $23 in postage?
Did it come from America, or is it overseas postage?
Let's find out. It came from Oklahoma. It just must be very heavy.
Oklahoma?
First of all, the, what's this outfit called? The Center for Land Use Interpretation sent us, as they often do, copies of some of their latest... Oh, no, these are back issues of The Lay of the Land, their in-house magazine.
Love it.
Are you interested in the landscape of perishable food in America?
Yes.
Or, let's see, how about The Long Reach of Shortwave? It's an exhibit about the voice of America.
That seems very omnibus-y.
That's showing up there. Oh, they must have an exhibition space, because a lot of these cover stories are about exhibits. I wonder if they can be visited. I mean, this is, as I've said before, this is like a block from where I often stay when I'm in LA, so... Maybe I should go hang out at the Center for Land Use Interpretation. See what they know. All right, I'm opening something from Joshua in Wisconsin. He sent us... Let's see. He's a city council member of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And he sent you a bag of whole bean dark roast coffee. It seems really... It's so dark that the mascot is some kind of lumberjack zombie.
Here, throw it.
Sorry, caromed off the mic.
Lumberjack zombie it is.
And he's sending it because he always thought the label art looked like you, or what you would look like if you were dead.
It does look a little bit like me if I were dead, except it has big gauge earrings, which I do not have.
Yet.
And, well, no. And also, it is wearing a flannel shirt, which I would do, but then with a bow tie, which I would not do.
You would wear a bow tie and you would wear a flannel shirt, but not together.
That's right.
Guess what? He's a longtime listener to your work.
Oh, this zombie's wearing a red beanie, which I do wear.
Please stop talking about that for a second so I can say something more important.
Sorry.
Which is that he ran for city council in Eau Claire, and he implies that it was inspired by listening to you.
Oh, that makes me happy.
And he has been elected.
Hey! One of us got elected. Congratulations.
I think you could probably make it in Eau Claire still. If you're ever in his neck of the woods, swing by. He offers you some cheese curds.
I've been everywhere, man. Boston and Eau Claire, man.
Brett sent us some World War II. This is the $23 package from Oklahoma. Sent us some World War II era copies of Fortune magazine.
We're getting so many magazines today.
What did Fortune look like in the 40s? Oh, it's amazing.
Maybe if we read them and then time travel, we can make good investments based on their advice.
I am so bored with these articles and so into all the advertising art. Like magazine illustration. Like what field has declined more since the 40s than magazine illustration?
Maybe sign painting.
Yeah, mustache waxing.
No, that's actually a booming business now.
Should we tell Brett he could have just sent these media mail and it would have been like maybe $4 tops? But look how heavy Fortune magazine was in 1940.
Look, he's a city council person. He needs to be able to... Oh, wow.
No, this is a different correspondent. This is Brett, who is presumably not on the city council of McAllister, Oklahoma.
This is really cool. Well, this illustration is blowing my mind. This is a mid-war illustration.
I guess even though World War II is going on, the rich people who read Fortune magazine are also interested in, look at this, the future of glassware. That's what's at top of mind for them.
Well, but science can. Science is what's going to win the war from the Nazis.
Should I invest in glass?
Every one of these ads is amazing. All these illustrations, amazing.
This carrot means healthy meals, but you know what? This carrot is actually a lump of calcium metal. This is an ad for calcium from Union Carbide.
Uh-huh.
Well, they'll never do anything wrong.
No, you can trust them.
Whoa, Picasso's Guernica. Fortune magazine has an arts and culture column.
Well, it's brand new, right?
Yeah, like check out the new painting by Pablo Picasso. The painters interpret the war, and it's got a series of World War II inspired works by Chagall. Max
The
Ahrens.
painters. Oh, here is an ad for a brand of vacuum tubes as manufactured by Westinghouse. That's awesome.
Brett, this is fantastic. Thank you for sending us Fortune magazine. Oh, here's why he didn't send it media mail. He has also included...
Oh, look at this. Look at this. Scott Toilet Tissue has an ad saying only an epidemic could close the factories and reduce wartime production. And so we need the sanitation provided by toilet paper.
Toilet paper will win the war.
Toilet paper wins the war.
Is that really true? I mean, if you already have toilet paper related, I mean, does toilet paper actually do anything to keep
poop off your hands? Yes.
Well, I presume they were washing their hands whenever they were wiping with.
Do not presume. Most of them had outhouses still at that time. Hard to wipe your hands. Also, Scott Toilet Tissue is not the one I would pick to keep poop off your hands.
So here's why he didn't send it media mail. He also includes a 30-year-old pair of Armani eyeglasses from his college job at an eyeglass shop. Probably only worn a few times. Not the original case, but these are amazing.
What? Oh, man.
That's great, right?
Look at those. These are real John Lennon's
Let's see in them.
They're real Coke bottles.
It makes you look older. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, this style does make one look older.
Having no eyebrows doesn't help, but your whole face has just faded away.
Yeah, the thing about a pair of glasses like this is if you're 20, you look like cool and anachronistic. But if you're old, you just look old.
Yeah, I write for the National Review now, and I wear these.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brett, and I already forgot, Joshua, and the Center for Land Use Interpretation. The best way to support the show is not to send us vintage eyewear, although that always, never hurts.
The more vintage eyewear, the better. I think everybody agrees.
But you could also go to patreon.com/omnibusproject and say to yourself, you know what? For a small monthly amount, I get a bonus omnibus and tons of other perks. Check that out at patreon.com/omnibusproject and seek out fellow futurelings wherever you can find them online. Facebook group, most notably, but there's also a Discord and a subreddit. And please remember to wipe your butt or we might lose the war.
Loose butt sink subs.
Loose sphincters save stingers. Is there a plane called a Stinger?
No, but there's a missile called a Stinger.
There we go. Almost.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come, but if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we wish you many goods and cheese and hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the office.